Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are so thrilled that you're here. I am Shannon Farley. I'm a co-founder of Fast Forward, and welcome to class 2 of the Fast Forward Academy. Now, let me see if I can see everyone. If you were at Rohan's session last week, can you give me like a boogie woogie so I can see you in your own corner? All right, we have some repeat folks. Nice, welcome back. I see you, Darnell. It's good to see you again. Hi, friends. Well, if you love Rohan, you are really in for a treat today. Josh has been a part of the Fast Forward community since the very beginning. He was in our first accelerator cohort. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Fast Forward. At Fast Forward, we believe the best tech should be applied to our biggest social problems. And to do that, our main thing is an accelerator program where we invest money and time and love into social impact tech organizations and help them get to scale. We've been doing it for a few years now, 7 years, and 59 groups have gone through the program. And I'm proud to say those teams have gone on to raise over $275 million and impact 88 million lives. And just FYI, application for this year's accelerator are open. We are looking for the next 10 groups we're going to support. So please, please, please get your applications in. The earlier they're in, the faster we read them. Now, last year, we published a tech nonprofit playbook, which is everything you need to know about how to start and scale a tech nonprofit. And we were delighted by the response. So the Academy is what we have built as a response to that. It is a series of 8 free classes, including the one you're about to hear from Josh Nesbit. None of this work would be possible without, I wanted to go through a few norms before we got started. The first is we are recording today's session. So please stay on mute when you're not speaking. And during the discussion and Q&A, there's a raise your hand feature in Zoom, which is under reactions. So if you can use that, that's really helpful. And then we will call you in the order in which you raise your hand. If you haven't updated Zoom, that's okay. Just give me like another boogie woogie in your Zoom box and I will note you and call on you appropriately. Also, this is an interactive session. So please, please, please bring out your analog tools, your pen and your paper, and you're going to use it for drawing and thinking that is to come. All right, fantastic. Fast Forward exists because we believe it's needed in the world, and we're so grateful we have many partners who share the belief. And this Academy would not be possible without eBay and Comcast Business. So thank you for supporting it. I also want to thank our sustaining partners, Google.org, BlackRock, HPE Foundation, Twilio, and GM for supporting all of the programs that we do. And exciting news today, if you stick around, eBay has graciously provided a $50 gift card, which we will pick at random and give to someone at the end of the show. All right, sound good? Great. Let's get to the main event. I am so excited to introduce Josh Nesbit. Josh is one of the most special human beings I've ever known. Currently, he is an entrepreneur in residence at the Emerson Collective. But I first met Josh when he was a founder and CEO of Medic, formerly known as Medic Mobile. Medic was a graduate of Fast Forward's first accelerator class, and Josh generously returns every year to our accelerator to discuss this presentation you're about to hear today on distribution ethics. It's a framework that's helped him and many of our founders understand the impact they seek to have in the world. One of the reasons I'm particularly excited about this Academy session is because I believe the social sector has been stuck for the last 15 years. The conversation around impact metrics has really been centered on how to measure and not what to measure and why. And so when I first heard Josh's take on distribution ethics nearly 5 years ago, it really blew my mind. I was so excited that as technology has solved the how, we get to ask ourselves deeper questions. And in a year unlike any other, where we've found that there is no ceiling to human suffering. I'm really excited about this conversation because it helps us frame out where we begin. Now, if you're new to social impact metrics, this is going to be fantastic. But also for someone who's been doing it for a long time, like me, what I love about Josh's framework is that I can use it every day in my work. In fact, I do it all the time when we're thinking about building a new product or program. When someone asks me if I can have an exploratory meeting, I really ground myself in where Fast Forward sits on the distribution train. And I'm so grateful for that context. It wouldn't be possible without Josh. So you ready to hear from him? Because he's amazing. All right, take it away, Josh.
Shannon, you're so kind. It is truly an honor to be here with everybody. I'm reading the chat, seeing who you are, where you are, and what you're working on. So, I mean, first of all, upfront, thank you for everything you're doing. I'm hopeful that I can be of service today and sort of playing the role of facilitator. And to do that effectively, I'm going to try to share my screen. But I hope you all have a pen and paper because it'll be useful. Cool. Thank you so much. So today we're going to talk about distribution ethics, and I have to start with some caveats to sort of bring more people along, but also to let you know what we're doing and what we're not doing. We're going to talk distribution, and we're not going to talk about values ethics, values-based ethics, or character ethics. So Aristotle and Nietzsche would probably be pretty upset about this framing, or at least it would be incomplete for them. We're also not going to talk about production and the relationships or relations between people in production, which is obviously critical. And if you're looking at power dynamics and shifting power dynamics in those relations, my sense is that you would have distribution ethics to work through anyway. So just to say what we are and aren't talking about today, this is going to focus on distribution. And the exercises here are going to be pretty simple, and they're going to get more complex as we go through this next hour. We're also going to move from individual work into group work. And my ask is just sort of stay with it and see how it goes. Don't be turned away by the simplicity, and just try some of these thought experiments, and we'll see where we get to together. So let's dive in. So first of all, many of us are working towards some sort of good thing, and not to make any assumptions about how our societies decide this is a good thing, just to simply state it. In Medic's work, we're working on health and healthcare that saves and improves lives. That's a good thing we're trying to bring about and spread in the world. And that I would love for you to write down. You know, what is a good thing? It might be housing, it might be education, it might be clean water, nutrient-rich food, social connections, peace. Go ahead and write down your good thing, the thing you're working towards. At Medic, you know, we're playing a particular role, and we're building open source software that supports the people delivering that care. You're seeing a community health worker using one of the open source applications as they're supporting that family to try to get the right care for that child. And that's the role of the tool. And what I would love for us to hold as an assumption for this session is that these things are linked. And what I mean by that is that it's important how the second thing on this is distributed. So for us, healthcare is the good thing, or health and well-being is the good thing. And then our helpful thing is that thing that helps people deliver that care. And we know that this is like not a direct relationship, right? We run all sorts of studies and we obsess over how these things are linked and related. For this session, I want you to imagine that the helpful thing you're building is driving and directly related to that good thing in the world. That is going to be like the key sort of philosophical step that's going to help us do all these other exercises. And you know, I know it's what we aspire to in our work. So write down your good thing and write down your helpful thing. Take about 15 seconds to write down that sort of simple relationship. Great. So now that we've done that, we're going to take a look at our distribution chain. So here we're talking about um, with and to whom is sort of the question that we're answering. For Medic, it's families that are in need of care or people who are in need of care. And then it became very obvious to us early on that there are a lot of other people involved in this chain, and that some are really sort of gating and some are less so, but there's a lot of people and entities involved. So for us, there are community health teams, there are networks of community health workers and local organizations that are the ones who are the providers, and for decades have provided care in their neighborhood door to door. And they're the people that we want to support in this sort of reimagined model. So they're a key part of this distribution chain. There are also partners who work with networks of those community health teams, sometimes dozens, sometimes tens of thousands, and they then reach and are involved with distribution of care with tens of thousands or hundreds of many hundreds of thousands of families. So this is very roughly a distribution chain in global health and for community health. And you all know your distribution chains. So take 30 seconds and just write down your initial thoughts. Who's involved with distribution? Who are you working with? And for the helpful thing and the good thing, who are you distributing it to and with? Awesome. So now that we have our good thing, our helpful thing, and our distribution chain, let's take our first thought experiment and sort of first exercise. On the screen, you see a circle. In that circle, imagine there are all the people that could benefit from the helpful thing that you're building are in that circle. And there are things about people in that circle that make them easier and harder to reach with your helpful thing and that good thing, with the software or with healthcare. So that becomes clear when you look at the circle and sort of start to imagine your circle. Then there are, of course, people who are easiest, and on the other side, people hardest to reach. And what I'd recommend that we do right now for about a minute is to start with any segment of your distribution chain and start to just brainstorm, start listing out the things that make it easier and harder to reach people of those places. And those things may be structural and systemic. They may be demographic. They may be geographical. You all know these things. Just start writing them down. Yeah, these are often things we've talked about, and they go across all of our distribution chains for sure. So start making a list. What makes it easier and harder to reach people in that circle? The reason we're doing this is because we find ourselves in the land of ethical principles. And what I mean by that is as soon as anyone is harder or easier to reach, we got to talk about ethics. And what I wanted to say is that it's not that scary. And some of this language can be really useful to us as leaders and as teammates to try to make sense of the decisions we're making and the why behind them. And that it is not just a technocratic exercise of building out our distribution models. We need to, often I find, we need to insert moral language and the sort of the ethical language here. So I found this really helpful to just kind of start by looking at some of the options. And what I'll posit up front is that you're going to take pieces of different options here, put them together in a way that's right for you and your community and your team. So like these are not meant to be just neat categories. We're gonna be flexible with one another and sort of hear what resonates as we go. But these are a couple of the traditional options. You just sort of pull up, Stanford's Encyclopedia of Philosophy, or you go to any like Moral Philosophy 101. This is kind of what you're going to get. First option here is a utilitarian framework, where the goal is the most good for the most people, and a concept of utility is going to reign here. And you get this neat calculation for utility of scale multiplied by net benefit. So this is a traditional utilitarian frame. And a lot of concepts, I think, are related to this. And there's language that when I see it, it sort of tips off the utilitarian wire. Like, I know that the person who's saying these things is taking this frame. One of those words is scale. Another is effective altruism, low-hanging fruit. A lot of public health rationale falls in this framework. Certainly, I think cost effectiveness models and discussions. In global health, we have DALI and QALY calculations, which are sort of calculations of disability adjusted life years or quality adjusted life years. These to me are utilitarian concepts. A second framework is an egalitarian frame. And in this framework, preference is given to people or communities or groups of people. And a concept of rights is what reigns. And the guiding principle, as I understand it, is to help those who are most disadvantaged by societies, past and present. And related language and concepts for an egalitarian frame include human rights, often social justice, last mile, a preferential option for the poor, and equity, and a focus on equitable outcomes. So that's an egalitarian frame. And third, generally, is a libertarian frame. And I'll sort of caveat by, I'd say, like post-1980 American libertarian frame, sort of what I'll put out there, that the goal is to respect individual liberty and resources reign. What I mean by that is that your helpful thing, and often that good thing, are spread by delivering to those who commit the resources. So those resources might be time or money or social capital, these days personal data. You commit those things and that stuff spreads. So that's a libertarian frame. And as you guess, I think language here is market forces, and just put in voting with your pocketbook is another. So obviously I have my leanings, right? So you just take all of that for what it's worth. But I think that these are some of our options, some of the frameworks that are used when talking about distribution ethics. And I would love for you to take a minute to reflect on what resonates and why, and just write some notes for yourself. While you're doing that, I'm just going to go up 3 slides just to cycle back through these in case it's helpful for anybody.
We have a question from Brian, Josh.
Awesome.
Would sweat equity fit into libertarian?
Totally. That sounds, that's a great addition. I'll probably add it to a slide. Yeah, thanks, Brian. Great. So now we're going to talk about implications. And perhaps unsurprisingly, I think once we started to have these conversations, we realized that taking a stance in one of these ways and articulating distribution ethics changes pretty much everything. It changes or could change your core product or service that you're offering, the delivery model that you're designing, so the organization that you're designing to deliver the things that you're building. Has implications then for your staffing model. You might end up changing your goals and how you articulate what your goals are. On that point, you might change how you communicate about your why, and that has effects for the resourcing of your plans. Often your team says, "That'd be great. I'd love to do that. How do we fund it?" And that's a lot of times where the rubber meets the road. And I'm seeing more and more people succeed in articulating their moral stance and having their plans backed as a result. And then it also gives you a nice framework for assessing new ideas. It's one thing to have an R&D pipeline. It's another one to have a principled R&D pipeline where you know what sort of criteria you're screening for when you look at the 1,000 ideas to turn that into 10 that you're pursuing. So we found early on that this had effects on sort of, you name it, it has an effect. So maybe take another 30 seconds and just ask yourself this question. If you apply the principles that you just say resonated, what might need to change? Whatever phase you're in for your organization or the thing that you're building, what might get impacted if you were to take that stance, if you were to apply your principles. I've also found it helpful at some points to literally draw circles, draw the barriers that are being overcome to get from one type of partner to another type of partner. Treat that as a delta and start to actually map parts of the model or product to our working assumptions about what will take us on that journey, how we'll actually travel that segment. And then to circle back to and revisit that. So yeah, what would end up changing if you were to apply those principles?
Josh, we have a question from Stephanie.
Great.
If you have multiple stakeholders, is it possible to have different moral stances for different stakeholders?
Yeah. Thanks. You said it was Stephanie?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. It's such a good question. What I find is there are probably two parts to that question that I'd love to comment on. The first is that I find that people are very eager to hand you a moral stance, and through their language in their discussion, like basically everyone has a point of view that they're positing in when they interact with you, and you will either be sort of shepherded by a group of people into a moral stance, or you'll take it yourself and find people who for whom that resonates. And I think as early as possible, articulating this with your team and with your early stakeholders, I find it's really helpful. So I think it's where it gets really hard is if you're enmeshed in stakeholders, including funders that have different frameworks they're using. You feel really caught and torn, and that's a really hard place to be. I hope more people sort of find community of stakeholders, board members, funders who are looking at this together and saying, like this is what we're doing. We're sort of on the same page with regards to the distribution ethics. So anyway, that's my hope for the future, and I think it's really hard to manage lots of different frameworks. Certainly, different partners and different community leaders and others are going to bring different perspectives. And what I find in those moments is the more that you're able to openly share about what your stance is, the more trust you're going to build, and the more likely it is that you'll succeed. So, yeah, I think either way, communicating about what your perspective is can be really helpful. Great question, Stephanie. Thanks. So now we're gonna practice some things. So we're gonna take about 20 minutes, and I think we'll be in about groups of 4, which gives us about 5 minutes per person. And what I would love for you to try is to just take 4 minutes, and that might feel long, it might feel short, but just take 4 minutes per person and tell the group about what you've written down so far in this session. Tell them about what that good thing is, what is you're working on and working towards, the helpful thing that you're building, like very simply just sort of state it, and then talk the group through your distribution chain, sort of what you know about the people involved with distribution, and then share what came out for you for what resonated across those ethical frameworks and what the implications might be.
With that, will you all join me in thanking Josh? I'm sure Josh probably has one last thing to say.
I'm just grateful to you all. Please reach out if I can be useful. And thanks so much for showing up today.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week. Keep up your good things.